everybody, and welcome to Outlawed Thoughts, episode 57. Doing a bit of a morning show, and probably not a very long one, but I wanted to do something since I have some time to kill here on a rare early time slot, which normally I would be spending sleeping since I work nights, but it worked out this way. So I don't know if Kareem is joining, although I did put a link his way, but he is typically working around this hour. And I'm going to, in a moment, live on the show, I will tweet out a link for anybody to join the show if they so choose and have a camera and microphone they want to put to use, since I don't really have much to do today. Instead, the primary topic of coverage for this episode is going to be all this Pentagon leakage. They've got some deep anal leakage going on at the Pentagon. I imagine their diapers are filled at this point. So, we're going to cover some of that stuff, all the drama that's surrounding it, sort of the precursor, and then my general takes on what I think this whole situation is, because it certainly merits everybody's individual opinions on weighing in. This is not an open and shut case. It is, of course, propaganda in the war times. And that is a very dangerous situation to be when buying or not buying information. And that is what we have here. We have information that has been given out, and we have reasons to believe it, not believe it, look at it, not look at it. And we're going to talk a little bit about that. Um, do some reactions to some news coverage here and stuff along those lines. And then we might get into some other stories depending on how long that takes us. So, yeah, we will get underway starting out with this AP story here. So this is from AP, and this is from April 10th, so 4 days ago. And this is covering some of this stuff here that was going on. Now, I saw news stories about this a week or so ago, but these documents had been circulating for a little while on Twitter and primarily Discord. So we're going to look at this here. Leaked documents, a very serious risk to security, says the Pentagon. Uh, Washington AP. The online leaks of scores of highly classified documents about the Ukraine war present a very serious risk to national security, and senior leaders are quickly taking steps to mitigate the damage, a Pentagon spokesman said Monday. And as the public airing of the data sends shockwaves across the U.S. government, the White House said there are concerns that there could be additional leaks. Chris Meagher, assistant to the Secretary of Defense for Public Affairs, told reporters that Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin first became aware on Thursday that a number of classified briefing slides detailing the U.S. military efforts in the Ukraine war and intelligence involving other nations were leaked. In the days since, Austin has reached out to allies, held daily meetings to assess the damage, and set up a group not only to assess the scope of the information lost, but review who has access to those briefings. The department is looking closely at how this type of information is distributed and to whom, Meagher said. So I want to make this clear first off. Be careful, because there's some rules and regulations around looking at leaked content on the internet. It's not necessarily completely unallowed, completely illegal, but there are some ways the government can do things to you or about you if you choose to do so. And I mean, basically, we all understand the government will kind of do whatever they want at this point, but it's just something to put out there. So, uh, at the White House, National Security Council spokesman John Kirby was asked if the U.S. was facing far more online releases. The truth and the honest answer to your question is we don't know, he said, and it is a matter of concern to us. You're damn right it is. Kirby said at this point, we don't know who's behind this. We don't know what the motive is. So, we're going to move on to this. I don't need to read the rest of this paper for the most part. We're going to start talking here. So, from the perspective at this point, this stuff had been circulating online. Now, a lot of people saw this stuff. I was one of those people on Twitter. And, well, some interesting things were laid out. The two big facts that I think were taken away, that I think are very pertinent, is first that the U.S. was involved much earlier than they claimed to be, and that there already are now present boots on the ground U.S. Military individuals in Ukraine fighting Russians, so fighting a foreign power. Furthermore, it showed that the casualty numbers were not as being reported previously, and we're going to get to some more of this real quick, but basically showed that there were about 16 or 17,000, I believe was the number, Russian casualties, which is far less than had been being reported by many different outlets, especially those connected directly and getting good answers from government officials here in the West. So, what this shows us is a few different things, and not show us a few different things. We're going to go over that. But um, if you believe the contents of these leaks, then what's happened here is simple. Really, quite simple. If you believe the content of the leaks, then we end up with a scenario where this shows that the U.S. And the U.S. media were spinning up propaganda, lying about the numbers, lying about the results of the war so far, even down to lying about the realities of people involved in the conflict and actually having boots on the ground. Or the US is attempting to save face either with these leaks, meaning soften the blow that they're eventually going to have to admit that this is not going as well as they planned, or some other situation. It's hard to say. Currently, it pushes me in a weird direction. So on one hand, which we're going to get into this right here. So on one hand, I believe that the government's narrative on these is that either they were hugely impactful because they're 100% genuine and 100% real, then I would go along the lines of thinking that these documents were completely farce, completely a propaganda from the US's side to begin with. But there's a problem there, which is the US's response has not been that. The government response, as well as many responses from the media, has been that, well, the documents are genuine, but parts of the numbers and information in the documents isn't. And you've seen Ukraine military officials now today coming out and saying that they're appalled by the US's um, coverage of them in those documents, because in the documents it paints Ukraine as losing this war pretty hap-handedly. Now, it does talk about some Russians struggling and how their military has some issues, but that's the point of the document. So, there's definitely some cherry picking going on there in detail. But at the same time, you run into the problem of the documents being completely fugazi to begin with. Now, personally, I'm going to drop this shtick at this point, and this is why. I believe these documents are completely genuine for a few different reasons that I'm going to get into a little bit later. But I do believe that the numbers are probably also genuine. I do believe the government was probably caught with their hands down, and for a few different reasons. One, we heard about it. If the government did not want to make an example out of this person, right? Keep in mind, you've got people like Snowden, right? There's constant talk about pardoning of Assange and Snowden, right? These two characters, both of which did something that the government hates, which is put information out there that makes them look bad. So, at the end of the day, this person who has leaked this information did the exact same thing. Now, if the government is presented a situation where they can disappear that person or make them disappear, whether that means removing them from the earth or just removing them from wherever they were, and making sure they're comfortable and well paid so they'll keep their mouth shut, in event that they do leak something like this, that is a much cleaner break for the government, right? It's not known where the stuff was leaked from. It got out there. They never have to confirm whether it's real or not, and so it just goes away. Some people on the internet and Reddit and 4chan believe that the stuff is real. Maybe Tucker Carlson and some media establishment people talk about it. But at the end of the day, it's believable that these were fake to begin with. They didn't do that. Instead, the government reacted by saying, hey, some of this stuff might not be real, but they're real documents. What this tells me is that the government knows that they were caught with their pants down. They know that they had to react fast, and the way that they reacted was to charge this person and to publicize the fact that they were doing it. Why? As a deterrent. It makes everybody else scared from here on out to come out with information on the war. You make whistleblowers scared shitless, and you'll never have to worry about another Assange or another Snowden specifically again. It'll never be a problem because there are no whistleblowers. If the second you speak, you're locked in a cage or shot in the back of the head or disappeared, Clinton style. It seems the government is willing to go to great means to do things like this, and we've seen it over and over and over and over again. So it's interesting to see this whole thing play out, obviously, with the news media and the narrative and everything. I saw Tucker Carlson had some pretty decent coverage on it. I thought his take was decent. I think people greatly misunderstand how this war is going to play out and end at the end of the day. Um, that end of the day is probably a long ways down the pike in another Afghanistan style war, or it's going to be abrupt with a big boom when Russia eventually gets broke. But those things aren't going to happen fast, at least not right now, it doesn't appear. So instead, we get to trade stories like this back and forth, and I'm sure there will be more to come over the life cycle of this conflict. Believe you me, I'm sure there's tons of whistleblowers sitting around watching this all play out who could come out with information that would blow people's tops off. But again, you wouldn't really know if it's true. In the digital world we live in, it's hard to know what information is genuine or not. I've heard a lot of debate back and forth recently over the whole AI thing coming from the libertarian space. This idea that AI is bad because it can replicate human speech patterns or human thoughts in a way to make it seem like it's real. The reality is that stuff's been around for a very long time and they didn't need AI to do it. They had bot farms far before that were very believable, past during election times and everything else. In fact, we're going to react to a video in the next episode that covers some of that. Another update I would give is that I've got some good interviews coming up here soon. Um, I've got some feelers out to a bunch of different people, but I'm trying to set some things up with some interesting individuals as always. Start, leave will be the interview I do on Tuesday or Monday, which is going to be big, and I think you guys will be excited for it for sure. Um, yeah, cool stuff to come on the interview front, and then I've got some plans going for some new co-hosts to bring in for the panel show to add on with me and Kareem. So that's going swimmingly. Let's go ahead and hop into this next portion of this here, which was what came after, right? Obviously, this stuff leaks. Everybody on the internet starts reacting to it. Now we get to this.
Today, the man arrested in connection with the leak of highly classified Pentagon documents is expected to make his first court appearance. 21-year-old Jack Teixeira faces charges under the Espionage Act.
So they have charged him under the Espionage Act, of course. The biggest of bad. They get this photo of him up here he's a guardsman, which is interesting. So this was a military personnel, somebody in the military who leaked it, and very young. So this is what I would call the leaker archetype in a way, right? Most of the people we see doing this stuff are younger people. I believe this individual seems to have a um, less fond opinion on war, which is interesting. find themselves in the military with those opinions. This is why we have to question these kinds of things, because people put statements like that out there, and then it makes me question reality of these things, because you don't see that very often, especially not when they're serving.
FBI agents in tactical gear converged on his Massachusetts home yesterday. News helicopters first spotted him reading on the back deck. He then emerged with his hands on his head. Authorities say Teixeira is a member of the Massachusetts Air National Guard, based at Otis Air Force Base, working as an IT specialist in the intelligence wing.
It feels like a movie. Who would have thought?
People who know him say he always expressed interest in the military and enjoyed gaming.
I went to high school with him. I knew of him. Good kid. Not really a whole lot of, I would never have kind of taken him, somebody like that. So it's kind of crazy.
Federal investigators have been looking into the leak of dozens of apparently classified Pentagon documents exposing top secret intelligence on everything from Ukraine to Iran to even U.S. allies. Hours before Teixeira's arrest, a report in the Washington Post described the alleged leaker as someone posting documents to impress young men in a chat room on the social media platform Discord. The Washington Post interviewed a teen who says he was a member of that chat room.
It felt like I was on top of Mount Everest. It felt like I was above everyone else to some degree, and that I would be able to brag to some people that I knew stuff that they didn't.
Popular with teens, experts say Discord's lack of content moderation.
So I don't give a shit about this. The content moderation has nothing to do with this, and I love the media spin from the left on this, of course, them being it. This idea, this concept that that this guy leaked documents, leaking documents. Well, I mean, whistleblowers sort of have to. That's part of the process. And he went to the media, which is what he's supposed to do, and it seems like the media is what got him fucked, which is why I would suggest not doing that if you have information that you actually want to get out of the to the public. This could have just as easily gone to the dark web or something, authenticated himself and put it out there, which probably would have been the better route to go. But then again, if the government really wants to find you, I happen to believe they just fucking will. I don't think any of those internet smoke screens will protect you, especially not some military kid that's sitting on Discord, which is about the least secure platform you can be on. Signal is only really remotely safe, and even that takes some tweaking. But the reality is, with inventions like Pegasus and these things out there that can get into your phones and devices, if somebody really wants to target you and get into your accounts, get into your information, and they don't want to change anything to, quote, let you know, they can be there right now, and you'll have no clue that it's happening. It doesn't matter what device you're on. It doesn't matter what operating system it uses. Those things can all be adapted and changed to work on it. That's why when I hear all these people bitch about tech overlords and the idea of AI, it pisses me off, because the reality is that shit's already here, and you guys didn't remotely care. In fact, you used and went on the platforms that were doing it. So you don't get to be mad about it now. That's the market. Compete with it. So that's the situation we're in there. Now, the social media companies have the added benefit of being able to do all that stuff while being basically pseudo part of the government, i.e. the Twitter files, where we get to see that the government's working hand in hand with them, which is how I assume it works with a lot of private companies until you get super big and they have to start threatening you or your family to get decisions done, or just offer you huge sums of money. All of those things always work. There is no one above the state in that manner. They'll win if they want to in that regards, and that's not a black pill. It's just a realization that exists. It's real. It's a tangible thing. We've seen them remove people from this earth just because they disagreed politically, let alone actually took actions to attempt to stop them from doing something, or show them for being liars in the case of this person who leaked documents that showed the U.S. was lying, or at least the Western media certainly was lying, and they were getting that information from somewhere. So, it is interesting to see the sort of wall of, the dominoes fall in this case, but it is weird that you have to take a step back and a deep breath and wonder whether all this is real or fake. And what I really mean by that is, I mean, it's easy enough, I would think, for them to find somebody willing to go to jail, but not really go to prison. Like this kid, possibly. But the reason I lean towards these being genuine is because they actually arrested somebody and they're actually going to persecute them publicly. To me, this seems like uh, the government flexing their power, showing everybody that could ever come out with information that could harm them or show them for being the liars that they are, that if you do that, they will put you in cuffs, they will put you behind bars, and you will not see the light of day. That's what this appears to be for me. Uh, this is a scary time, and this war is virtually just started. So, and really has a lot of room to wiggle and get worse. So we'll go ahead and watch this last part here, and then we'll rant a little bit more.
It's taken to the microphone at the Justice Department.
Jack Douglas Teixeira in connection with an investigation into alleged unauthorized removal, retention, and transmission of classified national defense information. Teixeira is an employee of the United States Air Force National Guard. FBI agents took Teixeira into custody earlier this afternoon without incident. He will have an initial appearance at the U.S. District Court for the District of Massachusetts. I want to thank the FBI, Justice Department prosecutors, and our colleagues at the Department of Defense for their diligent work on this case. This investigation is ongoing.
Ha!
We will share more information at the appropriate time. Thanks, everyone.
Okay. So we're going to close that out. That was just sort of the we did the thing, boys moment, which they always like to have. So yeah, this entire thing is a bit weird. On one hand, I think it's interesting, of course, that this is so public so fast. The media is a hell of a drug these days, and the media knows that in collaboration with the government, if they get this stuff out there now, it makes it awfully harder to talk about later on. And especially in the degree that you see the media painting the drops of these files as a Russian attack to begin with, and then quickly diverting to, oh no, this was actually one of ours, which is funny, because it just shows either they're lying by omission and by choice because they weren't paying attention at all, or they're just that dumb, which both scenarios are fairly sad for everybody. Personally, I fall on the side of it being a bit of both when it comes to media. I think they're scum-sucking leeches, but at the same time, they're not the brightest scum-sucking leeches. So take that with a grain of salt. And in other news, there's not really a whole lot that I'm prepped to talk about, but we will check the normal places. I have no word on any new stuff I haven't. Oh, we saw Trump suing his lawyer, which is interesting. So that's an interesting situation. I think that could turn into a fun little legal spat. Obviously, Trump's lawyer is fairly dumb, and listening to the recordings of the guy, he was a bad lawyer. So it seems like there's got to be something he can sue for, right? If you're that dog shit of a lawyer, I feel like that's what you got to do. You got to sue him for something. There's got to be something out there you can get him on. So we did see, I suppose we could talk about this a bit. We saw Elon Musk absolutely destroy the BBC. So that was an interesting situation, right? We saw him mark the NPR and BBC as either state affiliated or state something like that. I think it was state affiliated media he called them, which is true. And then that led to the NPR rage quitting Twitter, which is great, fine. And then it led to BBC sort of interviewing him, and this interview taking place. So we'll listen to that here, and react to that a bit. One moment here. I gotta bring up my YouTube because this was one of the ones I was not prepared for. If you are in chat and you have anything you want me to talk about or react to or anything like that, go ahead and drop it while I bring this stuff up. I wasn't really prepped today, so this show is just a little bit slower, especially with just one person. It's just a solo stream. I normally don't do these streams because they're almost a bit too laid back. I'm a very relaxed person, unless I'm ranting, so I have to have something to kind of work off of. So I do better with a second person, but it is what it is. I mean, I'll survive. We will survive. Okay. Elon Musk, BBC interview. Good thing I'm on YouTube where Elon Musk / BBC might get me something different. So yeah, we've got the full interview. I don't really want to hear this. But we will check out the major section that I've been seeing get passed around. 1 second. I might not be able to find a version of this that's cut properly because yeah, this might be a tricky one for me to find a link for because so many people have covered it. That it's sort of buried under a bunch of reaction channels. Sort of like what I'm doing here, but with less skill, of course. Yeah, but basically he ripped apart the guy for BBC's past transgressions and stuff. Okay, here we go. They uploaded a clip that looks like it's about 4 minutes, so this should work. We'll do this one. Boom.
I'm just curious. I'm trying to understand what you mean by hateful content, and I'm asking for specific examples. And you just said that if something is slightly sexist, that's hateful content. Does that mean that it should be banned?
Well, you've asked me whether my feed, whether it's got less or more. I'd say it's got slightly more.
That's why I'm asking for examples. Can you name one example?
I honestly don't use. Honestly, I
You
don't.
can't name a single example.
I'll tell you why. Because I don't actually use that for you feed anymore. Because I just don't particularly like it.
But you
And
said
actually,
you-
a lot of people.
So he has this guy just stuttering over his words. The guy claimed that Twitter has been more filled with things like racism, harassment, all these different buzzwords the guy uses throughout the interview. He says those things have increased since moderation's gone down. Elon asks him for some examples of that, and he can't give them to him. And he's just stuttering over his words, trying to come up with a way out of the sentence that he's walked himself into, but he's also doing that with somebody like Elon Musk. So you'll see how well that goes.
People are quite similar. I only look at
hang on a
my
second.
following.
You said you've seen more hateful content, but you can't name a single example, not even one.
I'm not sure I've used that feed for the last 3 or 4 weeks, and
Now, I will point out to you guys all here, I don't know how your Twitter feeds are, but this is the way I am. I will only see people who have the blue check mark now, or people who are verified. Those are the only people who I see on Twitter. Now, that includes blue subscriptions, which do make up the majority of them. But I am not a blue subscriber. So I have practically dead tweets, meaning unless somebody who is a blue subscriber or who is verified retweets me, from what I understand, my tweets are going basically into a void, which is real shitty for people like me. It means we don't get any exposure unless we fork over $8. It is what it is. I will be forking over the $8 because it seems to be worth it to me. It's my primary place for reaching out for guests for the show, things like that. I've been trying to do more emails lately. For instance, Steve Gosney, who's somebody I'm trying to get on the show, and hopefully will be, to talk a little bit about some kind of historical stuff. He is somebody that I reached out to through email. Sometimes people have their DMs turned off. If they don't follow me, then there's no real way I can get a hold of them. So I've got to track down a new way. Aiden Mattis from the Lore Lodge was at through Twitter, which led to an email. So it's just a bunch of different ways of getting a hold of people. So that is what it is. But yeah, you got to get used to that. And I don't believe for a second this guy isn't using his For You page because it's now moderated for a while now. So this guy's had a moderated For You page. He's lying, basically. The majority of people who are going to subscribe to Twitter Blue are not trolls. They're genuine people who are trying to spend time on Twitter posting whatever horse shit or useless stuff that they post.
Well, then how did you see the hateful content?
Because I've been using Twitter since you've taken it over for the last 6 months.
Okay, so then you must have at some point seen the For You hateful content. I'm asking for one example.
Right.
And you can't give a single one.
And I'm saying...
Then I say, sir, that you don't know what you're talking about.
Really?
And I love how blunt he is there. I say, sir, you don't know what you're talking about. So I'm not going to skim through the rest of this. Basically, he beat him over the head with that. He talked about how the BBC had lied in the past about certain topics and things like that. But he did legitimately kind of tear him a new asshole. So it was interesting to see. So yeah, it looks like Kareem is going to join here. So we'll stick around for a little bit longer and let him come on and speak his mind regarding this leak and all that stuff. But yeah, we will find something else to talk about here momentarily. Yeah, it's kind of a slow news week. Other than the Pentagon stuff, there's not a ton of stuff that I'm like, hey, I have to talk about this. Okay, this seems like a story that'll be fun to cover. Escobar hippo dies in car crash and other world news you may have missed. As reported by the Associated Press, a descendant of the hippos that drug lord Pablo Escobar illegally imported into Colombia was killed after it was struck by an SUV on Tuesday evening. The collision occurred near Escobar's estate, Hacienda Napoles, which is situated along the highway between the major Colombian cities Bogota and Medellin. The passengers inside the vehicle were unarmed, but the hippo died immediately upon impact, authorities said. I love how this is phrased. So are we supposed to believe that maybe possibly the hippo was armed? Did the hippo die from gunshot wound? Did the hippo shoot first? Was it self-defense? If the hippo got hit by the car, survived being hit by the car, could it legally then shoot the people driving the car? How does hippo self-defense work? I'm not sure. At the height of his criminal career in the 1980s, Escobar filled his estate with a menagerie of exotic animals, including a collection of hippos. After his death in 1993, the estate was abandoned, along with the animals inside it. In the last 30 years, the hippos The herd of hippos has grown to 130. With no natural predators, they have been declared an invasive species by environmental officials. Yeah, so that's a weird situation. We've got hippos being hit by cars in Colombia. Seems like that would be wild. Over here in Alaska, you hit bears, like the taxi here recently hit a bear, or rather hit a moose. And sometimes people hit bears. Hitting a fucking hippo is a different story. That's like slamming into a yeah, that's like slamming into a fucking dinosaur. A small one at that, but a dinosaur nonetheless. Yeah, we can look at this. The Go Lick the World. Let's listen to this clip here. This is our president, people, at his finest.
There's nothing, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, there's nothing our nations can't achieve if we do it together. I really mean it. So thank you all. God bless you all. Let's go lick the world. Let's get it done.
My favorite part is not only does "Let's Go Lick the World" sound disgusting, not kosher, and grammatically incorrect, but he said it wrong and had to restart. Like, let's go lick the world. It's clips like those that remind you that we're being run by senile tards. Here's an interesting setup. Remember the Parkland judge recently? This recently came out. Florida judge in Parkland shooter trial removed from death penalty case for hugging prosecutor. Nicola Cruz was sentenced to life without parole for gunning down 17 students and teachers at majority Stoneman Douglas High School. Florida Judge Elizabeth Schur has been disqualified from a death row inmate's case for showing sympathy to the state during the sentencing hearing of Parkland school shooter Nicholas Cruz, including hugging the prosecutor. The Florida Supreme Court unanimously agreed to remove the Broward County judge from overseeing any post-conviction proceedings for Randy Tudor, who was sentenced to death for the 2019 slaying of his landlord. Cruz pleaded guilty to slaughtering 17 people at Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland on February 14, 2018, in one of the deadliest mass shootings in U.S. history. So this is that judge removed for hugging the prosecutor, which is fucking insane that you as a judge would do that. Why you're having any intimate body-to-body connection with a lawyer at all is beyond me. I mean, of course, we know that's how they are behind closed doors, right? We know these judges and attorneys for the state, specifically DAs, people like that, are all buddy-buddy. They're all hand in hand, and when they want to fuck somebody, they know they need to do it, they're going to do it. It is what it is. So it is an interesting situation, though, seeing somebody removed for something like that, actually publicly. Big Tits McGee made it back into the news. This was interesting. We can watch this.
The story, because we can't resist, of the Canadian shop teacher, a dude who's been pulling the kids in his class into his sexual fetish. He showed up in class wearing Z-cup prosthetic breasts. And because Canada is a failed state, the school board took his side, always on the pervert side in Canada. They placed the teacher on leave only after parents threatened to sue. Most of Canadian media is ignoring this story, but there is one exception. David Menzies of Rebel News has been on this story of the teacher. He uses the name Kayla Lemieux.
Rebel News really does their part sometimes.
He's just spotted Lemieux at a shopping mall without the fake breasts. Watch this.
Why are you dressing inappropriately in front of children? Can you believe it, folks? Like a cornered rat. He ran for the hills. He didn't even have the guts to come back to his car. He's abandoned it here. He called an Uber and he's skedaddled, well, who knows where. I wanted to get to the bottom of those boobs, if they were real or fake. We have the answer now, don't we, folks? They are fake. They're as fake as a $3 bill.
You know, the confrontation is what it is, and I'm not really a big fan of that style of reporting on, like, citizen people. I'm more a fan of it like the Alex Stein style, where it's on, you know, idiots, politicians, and public figures. But I will say, because this person's a teacher, I feel like they're sort of open game in a sense. And it is wild that, from what my understanding is, 4chan called this shit. This was a teacher who got in trouble at some point, and I had some right-leaning views, or some views that didn't mesh with the school board, and then decided to do this whole thing to screw them. Now they're not having to work for the school. They're on leave, from my understanding, pretty much permanently, and they're getting to collect a check. This is a beautiful situation to be in if you're the person. You got to deal with the media for a few more months, but eventually that'll die down and you'll just be left with that nice fat monthly payment. So that's cool. I'll go ahead and watch the rest.
Mr. Lemieux, where are your breasts? In the history of journalism, has there ever been a better question from a reporter? Probably not. David Menzies of Rebel News joins us tonight. David, thanks so much for coming on. So there was a question about his mental state. I think it's been answered by the fact he's wearing a mask outside. Is that common?
I think that's to shroud his identity. I don't think that has much to do with the COVID stuff.
Even in Canada now?
You know what, Tucker? I think that was worn as a disguise mechanism. He put that on when he noticed we were after him. But here's the scoop, Tucker. As you know, several weeks ago, the New York Post had an exclusive interview with Carrie Luke Lemieux, a.k.a. Kayla Lemieux, a.k.a. Busty Lemieux. I know that sounds like a vaudeville performer. But in any event, he dropped a bombshell, Tucker. Those breasts weren't made in China silicone props. Those were actual real mammary glands. He allegedly started developing at the age of 39 and developed right into a Z cup, or a Z cup, as you say in America.
And that is true. The claim was made that those fucking chest boulders were of natural conception, and I swear to God, not even God himself could create such monstrosities.
And isn't that fascinating? Because this is such a rare medical condition. The Cleveland Clinic knows of about 300 cases. Oh, by the way, they are all biological females that have this case. This is how much of a medical marvel Lemieux is. But here's the thing, Tucker. We saw him without those breasts. So it's one of two things, isn't it? He recently had those breasts amputated, or he was lying. Now, the other thing is, Tucker, for the school board to hear Lemieux say,
"Oh, what I would pay for this guy to come out and claim he had surgery and had him amputated." No one could call him on it. He could just say it.
These are real mammary glands, and also that he can't wear a bra because it's too uncomfortable for him. This was like a...
Those things don't need a fucking bra. They need two hammocks side by side.
Gift from God to the Halton District School Board woke joke educrats, because for them, there was basically the thinking is this, Tucker: we can't do anything about him. It would be like firing a disabled teacher who was in a wheelchair. That would bring in human rights legislation and penalties. So we have to make do with what we have. And by the way, their solution, Tucker, is they tried to do whack-a-mole, putting him in other schools in the region, hoping nobody would notice his breasts. That plan,
like a dirty priest,
and failed miserably. So they're on plan C now, and that is they're paying him full.
When do they get to plan Z?
Salary and benefits to stay at home and do nothing. But thankfully, myself and ace cameraman Lincoln J, we caught him. The jig is up.
All right, everybody. Well, I was going to stick around and wait, but I think we're going to go ahead and call it a show. I hope you all enjoyed. Sorry this was a bit shorter and a bit scrambled. Next one will be better. Tonight or tomorrow. See you next time.